Hello, Randal. How are you doing?
Hey, Maureen, how are you doing?
I'm good. I like your
Oh,
background.
you do. I just lost my screen. I flew to Hawaii today.
Yeah.
I drove over because oh my goodness, I lost your window now. I know you're there. I can hear you. I can see you. Nice to be seeing you. Been a
Yeah,
little
good
while.
to see you too. And
Oh,
in Hawaii.
in Hawaii, yes, indeed. Do you like that? My kid showed me how to do that. Just one click of the button, and there I am.
It's very cool. It doesn't work for me. I'll show you what happens when I try it.
Let's see.
I don't even know
I
how to do it now.
I think he said you got to go down to the bottom left-hand
Oh
thing, hit
yeah.
the
Yeah,
stop
watch this.
video or the up arrow
Look,
on the
see?
video. Hang on a second.
This
In
is
the
what
right
happens to me. I turn
in the
into
right light. In the right light. Sorry. Oh, that's Joe Rogan. I got to tell Joe, I can't come on your podcast right now. I'm doing Maureen's. Go. I can't believe it. I hope he forgives me. So, yeah, I think I do know why that's green. But anyway, we'll talk about that another time. It has something to do with, anyway, my kid. I know how to fix it, sort of, maybe. So
I like this is my new setup though. I don't want to change my background really because I have a throw blanket over my shoe rack.
Oh, I see.
Which is working really well. The only problem with it is that I can't use my throw blanket as a throw blanket.
I see.
That's my favorite throw blanket.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do? I can't really go out and get what I need right now because we're in lockdown.
Yeah, it is. Or you can go and get one of your masks. I bought a box of masks last night. So I'm going to go and distribute them amongst my kids. Look at that.
Oh, look at you. I bought
yeah.
reusable ones, washable ones that just came today.
Oh, I see. I do have one of those industrial ones that I just finally unwrapped, and it is supposed to be able to remove lead paint. It's supposed to be able to filter out mold and also, what's that stuff? Asbestos and so on. So I don't know if COVID's on that spectrum or not. So anyway, we'll see. We'll see. You'll either get it or you won't. You'll either get better or you won't.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. And I heard today on the news that Jason Kenney is actually investing in mental health resources because they did a survey. Turns out people are suffering. Who knew? Who knew that they'd be suffering? Not that people haven't been suffering for years and years and years, but it's bad when Jason Kenney's investing in mental health.
Let's hope it's not going into mental health research. Let's help.
Oh, it's going into like
right to the source.
Oh, it's going to like helplines and things like that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. So words of wisdom, Mr. Randal, you've always got some. For those out there who are suffering, what are your words of wisdom?
I'm full of it. This too shall pass.
Oh my God, that's the same one that I used the other day.
Stop it. I didn't hear you saying it. So
it's true.
I'm just pulling that out of my box of positive mental attitude thinking things and so on. So yeah. And if you need to escape, I'm an audiobook aholic.
I know.
Freak. So
what are you listening to right now?
What am I listening to? I just listened to, oh my gosh, what's his name? David Goggins. I could go and take a look here. He's the guy that was the only guy that went through the Navy SEALs training Hell Week 3 times in his life. Or it's the only person apparently in American history. I actually did listen to a biography too of Audy Murphy, interestingly. And he also was military. He was infantry, but do you know who he is? Audy Murphy?
No idea.
He's a cowboy movie guy from the 50s, but he was the most decorated.
Oh, Audrey Murphy. Is it Audrey Murphy?
It's Audy. It's
Audy.
Yeah, Audy. It's a funny voice or a funny name, Audy Murphy. But yeah, a little 5'4" guy that his sister had to lie to get him into the military. And the guy was just, fearless, bulletproof, and just, anyway, is the most decorated man in the history of the world in terms of, American people. And he's received awards from many other governments. So I do tend to love to hear stories from real life people. So biographies for sure are what ring my bell.
Yeah, you seem to love anyway, real life stories and self-help stuff. Like you'll read, and I don't even mean it like self-help, but it's like, give me some of the old authors that you listen to, because you listen to the old guys.
Jim Rohn would be
Jim Rohn. There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, Tony Robbins, Mark Victor Hansen, Jack Canfield. I would have to say that some people, I suspect, take the word motivational and think it's a negative thing. And I think we all could use some motivation. I consider them all to be just teachers and educators and so on. And, one of my favorite sayings in life is, if you're green, you're growing. And if you're ripe, you rot. So, keep on keeping on, keep learning. So I was inspired by a pastor some years ago, a few different pastors, not like I spend all my time in church. I should spend more. But I was inspired by one pastor over in Southwest Calgary who arrived at church one day. I think there was about 800 people sitting there, and I had all of my little kidlets there with me. This is 10, 11 years ago. And he held up his 4,000th book that he'd read. And I remembered, sinking into my chair and thinking, oh my goodness, I am 3,995 books behind that guy. And so I thought I better do some catch up. So, funnily enough, another pastor at one time, again, I capture things. I learned, the phrase, capture things from Jim Rohn, and I probably studied him more than anybody. But he said, you've got to capture things. And this other pastor said, if you want something to kind of become a part of who you are, a part of your walk, a part of how people see you, you kind of need to hear something. You need to see it. You need to speak it, memorize it, and meditate over it. So hearing it, of course, is going to some kind of a class, some kind of a teaching, a seminar, a sermon, or what have you. Seeing it is capturing what jumps out at you and putting it down into your own notes. Speaking it means going afterwards and talking to somebody about it and revisiting what it is that you saw in this seminar, this event, this class, or what have you, and then memorize it. Of course, we all know what that means, and then meditate over it. And I know fully he was speaking about praying over it, or you meditate over something that's important to you. And I can't tell you how helpful that phrase was to me. Kind of, I literally feel like I was just kind of this empty vessel until I was probably in my late 20s, right? I'm not unintelligent, but certainly didn't pursue any kind of an education. But phrases like that I captured, I wrote that down, and it just resonated with me. And my kids, of course, could recite that, those 5 things. And the same pastor, actually, he said, if you can't be a good bookworm, he said, you best become a good tapeworm. And so anybody that might be under 70 on this video message might not even understand what that means, of course, but tapeworm, he's referring to audio tapes and so on. So there's so much great information out there. And so the first time anybody slid something in front of me and said, hey, I've got something for you. I think you'd benefit from you. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll take a look at it. And he said, no. He was looking for my body language. He said, no. He said, this is really important to me. I'm going to loan you some tapes. I said, okay, yeah, fine, I'll take them. He said, nope. He said, these are really, really important to me. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, I'll take a listen to them. He said, no. He said, you need to understand something. These are my Jim Rohn tapes. They're my original set. And when I move house, what I do is I take those Jim Rohn tapes, I put the package under my arm. The movers come in, they box everything up, they put it in the box, they follow me over to the new place, they take everything into the house, they put everything in its place. And he says, and then I take my Jim Rohn tapes out from under my arm, I walk over and I put them on my special shelf, and there's a special place on my special shelf. He says, these are really important to me. I said, oh, okay, I'll listen to them. He said, no. He said, listen to me. If you're driving home to your house in the country, where I lived at the time, he said, if your car slides into the ditch and rolls over and starts on fire, he said, you get in and you get my tapes. I'm like, this must be really something. And so he had the ability to instill a great amount of importance in an educational piece that just left me curious and kind of spellbound. And so, as the saying goes, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I just can't tell you where I might have been. I graduated from high school and so on with average okay marks and that kind of thing. But I can't tell you where I would be as a person, or certainly as a parent, if I hadn't have had some of the guidance that I learned from him. But he spoke to some 7 million people when he was alive on the planet. And anyway, just a brilliant storyteller, philosopher, and just somebody that helps young people to kind of set their sail, if you will. So anyway, Yes, I'm coming up for air now.
I was going to say, this is going to be the first interview where I don't have to ask a question, Randall. This is,
Oh my word.
I'm teasing you. I'm teasing you.
No, it's all good. I'm sure we'll be okay. So.
Oh, I do some adult education. And one of the things that occurs to me is that when I'm talking to people, they can sit and they can listen and they can absorb and they can nod and they can take notes, and all that's lovely, but somewhat useless unless they go away and actually do something about it, do something with it. Be determined to change in some way intentionally. So my question for you then is, what's the best learning that you've actually integrated into your life from these sources of wisdom that you described, like Jim Rohn?
The best learning, I mean, certainly Jim Rohn would be my favorite teacher, because he kind of touches on all the notes. He hits every note on the piano scale mentally, if you will. He kind of talks and speaks right to you. And I don't think I've ever listened to anything he's had to say and gone away and thought, no, that didn't mean anything to me. I know there are people that's the case. And but again, if somebody's in their hungry cycle, then things that are meaningful seem to mean more. And so the reason I'm saying that it depends is because, there's several spokes in our life. You've got certainly health, you've got your faith. If you've got some, you've got your family, right, and family goals, finances, business, relationships, and life's like a wagon wheel, if you will. And I remember that perhaps the most useful information that I learned, again, kind of sitting at the feet and watching and listening and learning from people that had really set it up and pulled it off, people that had really become accomplished in their field, if you will. And so I can tell you that I remember the very first day that I became a single dad, and I had 4 kids, 2, 5, 7, and 10. And the very first day, I remember thinking, I'm ill-equipped. I must learn some maternal skills. And, full credit to moms who can kind of keep the wheels on the bus when they're, learning how to be a single parent, because there's some learning that's involved. But anyway, to answer your question, here it comes. The answer is that for something like that, I, for whatever reason, was directed to a great radio station out of High River. And I listened to it through the day on my breaks and that kind of thing. And it was 1140 at that time, but it was a Christian radio station. And it had so many great stories. And I remember these classes, if you will, or these interviews. They were by an organization called Focus on the Family, and it's something like Dennis Rainey, and my gosh, this is 20 some years ago, but in particular that was a Dennis Rainey, and I'll think of the name of it here. But I mean, what happened was they brought in people that were great storytellers that had become accomplished, and they weren't stories. There were people that had gone through their own bumps and bruises, and kind of worked out how to be, or how to act, or how to conduct themselves in areas of parenting. For example, I had to learn how to be maternal and paternal. I had to learn how to cook. I remember the first meal I ever cooked as a single dad: turkey cubes and alpaghetti. Oh, it was what was there. And then I'm like,
it did the trick, man.
Yeah, that day it did. And so, but then I had to integrate, grocery shopping, and I was full-time with one of my kids initially, and then 2 of them, and then 3 of them, and then eventually 4 of them. That took some time and that kind of a thing, and never discouraged my kids from seeing their mom, but they just kind of go where they're going to go. And fortunately, I had the ability to have that happen. But anyway, so yeah, that was it. A Christian radio station that basically said, well, here's what happens. Here's a great way to talk to your daughter, for example, who's 10 or 11 years old. And I remember this one clear message was about a mom taking a daughter kind of away for the weekend, kind of in a retreat style. And the purpose of this weekend was to kind of have a one-on-one mom and daughter and so on, and really help your daughter to understand, hey, it's kind of that time where I see boys are talking to you lots. They've got that glint in their eye, and they're kind of smiling, and I see they're wanting to be or getting to be a little bit huggy and that kind of a thing. And the point of this one story that I remember is is the mom asking the daughter, have you decided how far you're going to let that boy go? And that's kind of a bizarre question that you don't think of as a man when your daughter is 10 years old. That's a mom talk. But, and of course, most young girls would say, oh, mom, oh, dad, right? I know what I'm doing. When you're 10 or 11, no, but, he's going to want to hold your hand. And then after he holds your hand, he's going to get huggy. And then after he does that, he's going to go someplace and that kind of thing. And if you haven't drawn the line in the sand, if you haven't decided where that's going to go, he will decide for you. And I'm telling you, Maureen, nothing that I had ever experienced in my life could have prepared me to learn or how to have that conversation with my daughter, because I knew if it was going to happen, it was going to happen with me. And so I definitely did have that conversation. Yeah. And I just put on the mom hat, right, if you will. And anyway, so my daughter, we talked about lots of those sorts of things.
Yeah. You had some courageous conversations, I bet, over the years with your kids.
I've had all of the conversations.
Yeah.
They've told me some of them multiple times. Do your kids ever remind you, Mom, I heard that story? Or Mom, if you tell me that story one more time, I'm hanging up on you.
Well, they haven't done that with me so much, but I don't think I tell as many stories as you do. You are a great storyteller. That's one of the things I love about you. You are a storyteller. I think you learn through story and you teach through story. And I think you entertain through story. You're one of the more entertaining storytellers that I've ever met as well.
Well, thank you. That's nice to hear. And I'm a big fan of a good story. And
yes, me too.
One of the things that I heard somewhere along the way was that life is full of stories, and half of them are examples of how to be, how to do, how to conduct yourself, and the other half of the stories are great examples on how not to be, how not to conduct yourself, and so on. And so you can watch, listen, and learn from those people that have had a train wreck, and you can also learn from those people that have done it right, done it well. Whether again it's about education, about business, about relationships, about your path in spirituality and finances and that sort of thing. So great stories on both sides of the ledger.
Well, we've been having family Zooms on Sunday nights, and I've been asking questions. So I ask kids lots of questions, or they come with questions. And one of the questions was, what wisdom do you have for people during pandemic? And I actually did say, my kids would attest to this too shall pass.
Yes.
And then one of the questions was what family stories are you tired of hearing? And they said they're not tired of it. They love them. They want more of it. I probably don't tell enough stories to them about when they were young and what would so they crave that stuff. And
isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, it is nice.
Kids, they say to you, Mom, tell me a story of when I was 3.
Oh, they love it. Same story over and over. They love it.
Yes.
What was I like? What was I like? What was I like? What did I do? They love it. So.
My kids know my only valuable possessions on planet Earth are, those 4 big crates. I'm going to say laundry basket size baskets of photographs, because I, took thousands of photographs when they were younger, and the video footage and that kind of a thing. And, it's one of those things I just must get them scanned and so on. So because they just reflect and tell so many great stories, right?
Yeah. And you describe this radio show, which I think might still be going. I think I accidentally stumbled on this one day, this Focus on the Family Christian radio show. And what I heard you say was that this was some of the most practical advice that you got right when you needed it, when you first became a single dad, on the how-tos that you desperately needed. And I'm thinking about, your kids and the way that you describe some of the things that you did. I remember you telling me once about going to Superstore at night and like you had measured your kids like with a
Yeah.
measuring tape kind of thing about what size they were, and you knew that if a t-shirt was this wide across
Yeah.
and this long that it would
Mhm.
fit, and so that's how you would shop for clothes, because
Yeah.
you had to be fast and efficient kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, when you're single parenting, I mean, you just don't. The first time I ever went to a clothing store that had clothes for all of my kids' sizes, and again, 2, 5, 7, 10, so 3, 6,
Yes.
8, and 11, and they're each in a change room.
Yeah.
It's like it's like it's cat and mouse. Who's going to come out? Who's going to need to be seen? Who's going to put something on backwards? And there's people behind me, and I'm realizing this is going to cause. I'm pretty tough-minded, but this is going to cause me a nervous breakdown because, of course, they're too young
Yeah.
to be in the change room and that kind of a thing, and looking for clothes. So what I learned to do, for sure, I think I could save a lot of people a lot of bumps and bruises in terms of single parenting life, just by some of the things that I did. I learned to do grocery shopping. I'd arrive at Superstore. Why Superstore? Because they had a clothing section.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at 11, they closed at 11 back then, so I arrive at 10:30. I could every aisle Superstore in half an hour, if you can imagine. But I did carry a piece of paper. This was before the Zorus or the Pocket Pilot, Palm Pilot or whatever. Anyway, I did carry a piece of paper in my wallet and had all of their sizes, the width of the shirt, the length of the shirt. If the shirt's too long, depends on the age, it's not going to be right. Or the pants, size 10, 12, 14, 16. What the hell does that mean? It means nothing, right? But if you lay them flat and you would put a tape measure across the pants, well, that's going to fit the waist, right? So you know what they have at home, so you know what you have at the store. This is odd, but from the back of the top of the pants down to the crisscross, and can I say crotch on here?
Yeah.
It's going to tell you if it's going to fit their backside or not. And then their legs. But I had every kid, so four of their names on the piece of paper, and even shoes. People, once you find some shoes that have good arches and that fit, if you're in a size 5 now, size 5.5 is going to fit next time when they're ready for shoes or what have you in the same brand. But so I did things by lists for sure.
Yeah, you're very organized. You are probably the most listy person I know.
Yeah, people have always known I've had.
It's an
There's
art.
where some mental health money should be spent on Randal's list of holidays. Yeah, years ago when I worked in telecom, everybody knew what a list freak I was, and my what was Outlook back then would pop up, and my boss used to call it my get milk screen. He says would pop up, bing, 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 bing. 37 screens would pop up that would say get milk, which they didn't. They would just have a little fun.
But you're a process thinker, right? So you have lists, and you have a process for all your lists. Like you're the most organized. I was going to say hoarder. I know.
I have gone through that phase. I'm out of that phase, by the way.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, purged everything. But so it was over the top. So I did have a guy come. This is again back in the early days of the internet in 1997 or 1998, and he came running into my office. He says, "Hey, Randal, guess what? There's a new website out." And I said, "What?" He said, "It's called www.list.com." He says, "Come with me." And I bolted out of my chair, and we ran down to his computer, and he typed it in, and the screen came up, nothing. And then he laughed his ass off because back then, now of course there's a website called list.com. But anyway,
cruel.
It's just kind of a way to get it out of here, get it on the paper, right?
For sure.
Yeah, thinking on paper is a good thing to do. So
good for you. Good for you.
And you're very organized as well. I know that.
Well, I am, but I have to. I have some things that work for me, but I had to simplify. Like I've downsized over the last couple of years and simplified my life hugely, and I feel like mentally free.
Yeah.
Emotionally lighter. All of it. Like the more stuff I have, the heavier I feel.
Yes, I hear you.
I had 4 kids too, and we had to live in a big house, and we had to do all that stuff. And I have to say, I like looking after a home, but I don't like looking after that much home. And that much storage freaks me out.
Yes. You know what great news is in that? I think you would agree with me, is that your kids have thought, too much. I don't want that. I want a more simple life. Haven't they?
Yes.
My kids for sure have, because I had 6 of everything.
Yeah.
7 sometimes.
Well, we had stuff that we didn't know we had, and I mean it was actually hard to get rid of. And So I've downsized hugely, and it's helped me to be organized. And I have a little, like I write everything down. Everything's in my calendar, or
Yeah.
I don't remember it, or I lose it, or, so like I say, I have to get it out of my head and onto paper so that I can.
Yeah, it frees up sometimes. It's a good thing to do, purge electronically or purge on paper, and then you can, free up your mind for other more important things, for sure. I've written some emails that I've never sent, but I needed to write them.
Yeah.
and purge my brain. But I know they're sitting there, I suspect, in a draft box. I probably have some from the 90s. And
there's something to be said for getting stuff down on and writing it down and getting it out, right? Just getting it out.
Yeah. I think it's a Brian Tracyism. He says, think on paper. It's just a big mistake not to think on paper. And so I think my kids have kind of picked up on that scenario as well.
Yeah. So you're a big list maker. Are you a journaler?
Not in the traditional sense. A journal, it would say, in this day, this entry, this person, this situation. And so I'm always forever telling my kids to do it. I have in the past journaled in a way where when I was on holidays, I would say, and I'm thinking way back to, right, again, age 3, 5, 7, 10. I'm thinking Jana, Blairmore dress, first time on the beach in Nanaimo, BC, the ferries in the background and that kind of a thing. And so, and I would put just these bullet points from these occasions. But again, it helps you to kind of revive that story, right? And be able to tell you. So I do that. Funny that you mentioned that. So I did journal that we were driving to the ferry back in my old Volkswagen camper van. I had a Westphalia back then. And Jana would have been about 3. So we're getting in the queue to the ferry. And there's a woman standing there holding the sign for the ferry. She's got a coffee in one hand. She truly looks like a Barbie. She just looks like a Barbie. She's fit, and she's got a man's white dress shirt on that comes down below her, I think, bathing suit bottom, and beautiful white brand new running shoes with a sign and a coffee and that kind of thing, and sunglasses on. And my boys are all going like this, and my daughter says, "Oh, Daddy, that girl has the nicest pair." And then we're all cracking up. I mean, she's talking about the shoes. The girl has got the nicest pair of shoes ever.
That reminds me, I took my boys. Are you done? Sorry, go.
No, so that's journaling. Just the bullet point.
You love that.
Even if the story becomes a little tainted or twisted thereafter, it's So I guess I used to journal, and now it's more electronic than paper. But
that's funny. I tell the story too of my kids when I took Sam and Ben when they were probably like 3 and 4 to the circus. That in Peterborough, Ontario. So we go to the circus, and there's a contortionist, and she gets up there in her sparkly little onesie, and she turns herself inside out. She's inside out. And Ben was like this.
Yeah.
And he turned to me and he said, "I thinks I loves her."
Oh my gosh.
That was awesome. I'm like, uh-huh.
Oh my God. How old would he have been back then?
Oh, like 3.
3. That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, he knew.
Oh, yeah.
I thinks I loves her.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. What a great thing. You told him that a few times, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think I love.
It's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. And so, you got to capture those old stories because they're not young forever. I do have one. I know I've told it to you in the past, but it's funny when, and again, just a lesson that I caught from listening to somebody that was more of a skilled parent than I was. And this lesson, was about every time you open up your mouth, you're either building someone up or you're knocking them down with your words. And so we had just gone through this lesson. And another one I learned was about, the harmony bench. I might tell you about that. But I was in my house, and Jay and Jana. So Jana would have been about 4.5, and Jay's a couple 2.5 years older. And Jay, they were my 2 that got at it. Jay was given the pouty lips, and he was giving what for to Jana, and just being really unkind to her with his words. And I'm in another room, and I can see them just kind of in the gap between the two rooms, and I'm watching just to see where this is going to go. And he's got his hands on his hips and me. And so I poked my head into the room. I said, "Hey, guys, hey." And he was a little bit shocked, a little bit shell-shocked. And I said, "Buddy, do you remember just this last week, we were talking about this very thing. So every time you open your mouth and you say something to your sister, you're either building her up with your words or you're knocking her down." I said, "Do you know what I'm talking about?" And he goes, "Yes," like this. So he's the kid that's giving me the least trouble. He said, "Yes." And Jana, age 4, she throws her hands on her hips and says, "Yeah, Jay, you were you were knocking me down and you should have been knocking me up." And I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's
So
awesome.
I couldn't even, I just had to leave, right? I just cracked up and left. And so yes.
That's like so during pandemic, this is one of the things that I've been saying is,
Yeah.
so Sam comes over every day and
Yeah.
we hang out and we work out. So he's the only person that I see. And that's, I've limited my exposure. And so
Yeah.
this is what I've said to him. I've said, well, Sam's the only person I expose myself to. And he keeps saying, "Could you please stop saying that?" Like, please, Mom, please stop saying that.
Yeah. That is so funny how terminology has changed this generation.
Yeah.
Right. Knocking somebody up in UK,
Knocking
of
up.
course. And knocking somebody up means you're gonna, wake them up, right? And what's the other thing my daughter was, I'm gonna go, what is it, hang out with? And hook up with. I'm gonna go hook up with somebody, and that just means we're gonna get together, right?
I
And my
know,
daughter's
but
like,
when they first said it, you're like, no, please don't.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So
things
Randall,
get
we're one of the guys I would describe as a Renaissance man.
Oh, don't make me Google that. Don't make me Google that. I hate when that happens. Okay, tell me,
Right?
expand.
Well,
Tell me.
meaning that you're a man of many and varied interests and many and varied career paths.
It's I've been fortunate that my dad worked like a maniac, but he had a plumbing and heating company. The guy worked like a maniac. He had a grade 8 education, and I just respect what he did, or how he provided for us. And my mom, she was had 7, I believe, knee and hip operations, so she was very immobile. So my dad, went to work, did the business and that kind of thing. Usually brought home, I hate to say, restaurant food or fast food or what have you, and so on. But he was a good example of a hard worker. But he wanted me to join his company. I did it out of just it's the family thing, do it and that kind of thing. But it didn't ring my bell, didn't hold my attention, and so I went through and got papers in that industry per se, journeyman tickets and that kind of a thing. But I was far more interested in doing other adventures and entrepreneurial things. So age 11, pumping gas, right? And age 14, I was operating a Caterpillar, a bulldozer, actually, a International 100, in Brooks, Alberta, backfilling outside services. When they're building a new district, they got to put in those pipes that go to all the houses, that kind of thing. And but yeah, I've done a land bank in the past with a friend of mine who was just exceptional. Again, it's usually with people that are really accomplished. I like to hang with people that are really accomplished, and that kind of goes along with the biography thing. Learn from people that have watch, listen, and learn. And I worked in telecom startups, and spent a dozen years in automotive management, and I'm still deciding what I'm going to do when I grow up. But
well, that's the question. Hey, but your dad sounds like a good example of a man who did what needed to be done. And that's what I hear from you when you talk about, your kid, when your single dad, when they were little, like you did what you needed to do to get it done.
Yeah.
And it not in a bare minimum way at all. Because I think, when you describe learning to be maternal and paternal, like, be, and watching them through the crack in the room, and, taking opportunities to teach, them what they needed to know, and finding joy in all of it. Like it's unbelievable. Like you did what needed to be done, and you did it really, really well. Your kids are great.
Well, thank you. Yes, my kids are great for sure. They're all very, very different. And now I'm trying to close off the tap a little bit and back out a tiny little bit, because I learned the phrase helicopter parenting or umbrella parenting and that kind of thing. And I thought, and I don't have grandkids. I have grand puppies, so I can move my umbrella onto those puppies. Or, my daughter, she said some lovely things to me in my life, but she just said, Daddy, I just can't wait until you're teaching my kids. And I was like, wow, that was like, that's, okay, take me now, right? If a thunderbolt hit me right now, life would be complete. I'd go out in bliss, kind of a thing. So that's
oh my
about the
gosh,
nicest
what a nice thing. Yeah. And I could just see you as a grandparent. My God.
Oh, weird. Yeah. Well,
You'd be like the
some things
perfect
are gonna have to happen.
grandparent.
I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, I think so. So if you could go back to age 18, 19, 20, 21-ish
Yes.
and start your career in life all over again, where would you go with it?
I suspect that I have a friend who had real estate, or has real estate. When I first met him, I think he had he called them doors. He had 15 doors, a fourplex, a duplex, a couple single houses, that kind of 15 doors. That's a lot of property. And then over the years, he acquired, I watched him grow up to 255 doors. So the guy was passionate about his craft and so on. I would like to say I wish that I had the desire. It's like when somebody puts something in front of me, you think, I know that would be fantastic for me. To answer your question, if I had been immersed in the area of finance, I always thought, wouldn't it be great if one of my kids became an accountant or a financial services person of some sort, so that they can understand money and be a beacon or a sounding board, for the rest of the family when we, go and spend our money and save what's left, instead of save our money and spend what's left, right? Little things like that. So I suspect that it would have been to focus on money some more, most definitely, right? As they say, I think I have a saying on my Facebook from Einstein. He says, compound, I forget what it says. Anyway,
compound interest is like the eighth wonder of the world or something like that.
Those that understand it will win, basically, and those that don't will get crushed.
Yeah.
So that's it, I suspect, in that realm, because I think what happens, it's like anything. When you take care of one area in your life, it affects everything else. When you take care of your health, it affects everything else. Another phrase, from Jim Rohn, everything affects everything. I think I'll let down, I'll leave my house a mess and, go to work and try and fix the corporation. He says that probably won't happen. Great phrase. He says the guy wants to go and clean up the corporation. He can't even clean up his closet. And he's basically, helps you look in the mirror and that kind of thing. So anyway, to fix the finance component, wouldn't it be lovely to never have to think about, how to feed this, how to provide for that, how to leave a legacy, that provides for three generations, and things like that. If you fix that early, of course, it takes care of itself. But
I'm seeing you. I'm thinking about you wanting to go into financial planning and investing and learning how to, make your money make money.
Yeah.
But knowing who you are, I would see you also taking that knowledge and applying it to, almost like an underprivileged group. Like I could see you specializing in an area or a demographic that desperately just needed a nice guy to help them. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, perhaps. Yes.
Oh man.
I see one of my sons, both of my sons, they're living that. They're not just speaking about it. Like my son Dan, he's a frontline at Hull Services here in Calgary. I mean, taking care of kids that are just hanging on by a thread, that didn't volunteer their way into that scenario, that basically got plucked from society because another day and they might not be in society and so on. And just knowing that he's, given of himself and turned himself inside out, to be a youth care worker, and he's worked as an Aboriginal youth care worker on the coast and worked with kids with AISH and and autism and just mental health stuff and that kind of thing. And my other son, Jay, has done dozens of speeches in front of high schools, to talk about, really about mental health and about, what good comes your way. I mean, he's done talks to help people. The target is to help people to realize that there are safe people around them that will be a safe place to go or to speak to or to voice, when you're feeling at wit's end, at life's like life's going to come to a halt. And he's just done so much great good for that. So I mean, my kids, if thank you for saying that about me, but my kids live it, and you suspect that of me. And so maybe I'm living vicariously through my kids or what have you, but they're the
Wow.
front line people. So,
But just they are, and I do know that about them. But
mhm,
I can't see you ever seeing someone who needs a good person to help them and not helping them, because you're a good person who would help, who can help, and you would if you could, and you do. Like you just you're like that. And
yeah,
I see your last bit of business that way too. Like, I mean,
mhm,
you provide a service for people, a guidance and a
yeah.
service to people who, in an industry that they don't know how
They
to
get
navigate.
trampled on. Yeah, yeah, indeed. So that's in the automotive industry, basically working for working for buyers rather than working for dealers, and
Yeah.
basically kind of being like their big brother on the schoolyard, and running interference and removing all that anxiety. And so I still, help people with that realm for sure. But um, I most definitely, now that you say it, I see the underdogs. I think it
Me too.
probably becomes because, I was kind of left on the outside. I was kind of the last kid picked for, the baseball teams. As a kid, I was a larger kid, and, stuff happens with that. And some bullying happens, that kind of thing, and verbal bullying and that kind of thing. And so most definitely, my kids leave no kid out ever, ever,
No, you
ever.
are all about inclusivity.
Yeah, just help, just, bring people into the mix, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Just
people that I write off, and I'm like, well,
mhm.
guess what? Guess what I want no part of ever again. You're like,
Yeah,
well, you know, they
yeah,
need some help, and I'm going to keep talking. And I'm like, oh man, good for you.
yeah. I
You've
think
got a
I think
patience for that I
distance is
don't
good.
necessarily
Yeah,
have.
yeah. Or or I need to be a patient somewhere to stop doing that. But
No, I think it's great. I think it's great.
yeah,
It's a real gift, I think, that you have. And so before I knew you, I
mhm,
hired someone like you to help me buy a vehicle,
right.
because I never believed when I'm walking into a car dealership
Mhm.
that I'm getting the truth. I
Yes.
never
Yeah.
believe that I'm getting, I always feel like I'm being conned. Even if I'm not being conned, I feel like I'm being conned.
Yeah.
And I don't understand the industry. And I remember saying, I think I was saying something like, I found a great new site for buying a car. And someone said, oh, what is it? And I said, grabyouраnkles.com. Like, it's like,
Jeez,
honestly, like, I
I
can't
love them.
stand it. And so I went and I hired someone to go buy my
Yeah.
last two vehicles. I think it
Mhm,
was two, or maybe it was just the last one. What
mhm,
a great experience. And then I met
yeah.
you,
Mhm,
and you provide this service for people as well. And,
mhm.
and you end up doing it at no cost to the buyer, which is
True.
incredible.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to believe actually, but yeah, every dealer on planet Earth has a referral fee built into their marketing costs on that
Yeah.
car. And
Hmm.
so dealerships know how many hairs are on your head. They know how many breaths you took when you were in their dealership. They know how many dollars and cents it took them. Today, it took $84.53 to get you to come through the door to have a 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 chance of getting you to buy a vehicle. Tomorrow, it will cost $211. They know, believe me, they know. And so what happens is they have an amount built into every vehicle purchase, but it's built into the marketing bucket, if you will.
Hmm.
And so coffees, creamers, the website, all of that kind of a thing, that provides the cost of opportunity. And so what I've figured out, of course, is that the masses of people uh, the masses of dealerships don't provide the referral fee yet. They've accrued for one for every single vehicle. So if a dealership sells 100 vehicles in a month, what happens is that, maybe they paid out one referral fee. And so that's not money that you can negotiate away from them. But anyway, I know that money's there and it comes from there. You can't negotiate it away from them. Anyway, I would typically go and find 3 vehicles that were what you were looking for. If they're new and they're identical, that's easiest. And just talk to the dealers, and kind of like a plumber can talk to a plumber and a pharmacist can talk to a pharmacist, because I spent many years there. They understand that what I'm doing is working for the buyer, help them get a better deal than they will on their own. And we just kind of cut to it, and we got 3 bids. 2 months ago, I had a gentleman, the dealership that sold this guy a truck. He wanted to get out of it, wanted to get a bigger truck to be able to pull his snowmobiles, his sleds, and that kind of a thing. He needed to go to a 3/4 ton or 1 ton truck. And the store that sold him this truck offered him $35,000 for it. And I found another store that would pay him $38,000 for the exact same truck. And that's the vehicle or the place that was going to provide his new truck. And then one other store would pay him $40,000 for that truck. So there's a $5,000 difference. And is it shady? I would say not. I can remove the shade and point some light into every corner, because to that one store, it was worth $35,000. And if that guy doesn't buy it and sell it in 90 days, he's out on his ear. And so in his defense, the guy that offered the least, he offered what he thought he could. And the next store thought it was worth a different value, but they have a different audience, different hunger cycle, if you will. And the other store, they're a low margin, high volume store. They need to be because they're out of town. Anyway, it's the same truck. It was worth $5,000 difference. And so that's what I do. I'll remove all that fluff. We'll find out who's going to pay the most for it on the new vehicle. Remove all the fluff, find out who's going to offer the least for it. Yeah. And sometimes the new vehicle comes from one store and the old vehicle goes to another store. And so it's kind of a double win. Anyway, it's just something I kind of figured out. It's fun to do. It's something I'll probably retire doing, on a part-time basis, just because I do like working for the underdog. And do like removing all that.
This is what I'm getting at. Yeah, I think you do. And so, and you've had to pivot a little bit with pandemic, and you're doing some other work in the meantime, because I think car sales are probably slowed down a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're still doing it though, right? You're still available and still doing that?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And just because I've done all of these things that, and many more that we didn't talk about, direct sales for me, when I became 27, it was the beginning of the learning, this big massive river of education from people that were accomplished and people that had done it, right? It was just the best education I ever got in my life, but it allowed me the ability to kind of work, and do anything that I would like to. I can't do they won't let me do brain surgery yet, but I can probably watch, listen, and learn, right?
You probably listen to some audiobooks on how to do it. You probably have a pretty good idea.
I would, the watching part, I think, would be important. But anyway, listen, if a guy can change your faucet, if he can overhaul your faucets, he could probably do a ingrown toenail surgery.
You're hilarious. So you were a plumber for a while.
I don't tell that to too many people, but I actually became a certified plumber and gas fitter.
Too late. I've got about 8 listeners that now know about this.
Oh my gosh.
The word is out.
Well, you're going to have 19 listeners on this one, because I'm going to go and listen to it 18 times just to make sure, I didn't say something I shouldn't, which usually happens. But yes, so no, I became a plumber, believe it or not, the week before I turned 21. I was a journeyman. And again, that was because I worked in the summers and spent those times with my dad, because he was just such a great craftsman himself. Yeah. So got into it. But I always say it's way more fun to listen to your 68 Camaro and step on the gas and hear it go and work that stick shift than working your Delta faucet.
Yeah, right.
Overhauled. Yeah, one has the exhaust sound and that purr.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just wasn't my thing, but I did do it. I'm glad I have the experience and so on.
Yeah.
And actually, I could have gone the education route that way as well and got a Bachelor of Education in 2 years because I was so young. They said, your marks are good and you're very young. Would you consider going up to get a Bachelor of Education up at the University of Alberta? And I thought, And I did go up, did look around, did walk around. I just didn't realize, nobody's fault but my own, I just didn't realize that a Bachelor of Education, could open a million more doors, have the whole hiring world look at you in a completely different way because you have a degree. What's the degree? It doesn't matter. Companies want to see that you busted a hump to, get that other couple of years or invest those couple of years to get a degree, right?
Well, it used to be that way. I don't know that it's that way now.
Yeah, I think they still throw on the filter, right?
Oh, God, I don't
A
know.
bachelor's degree a degree would be preferred, right? With things anyway. But yes.
I don't know. There's so many degrees now. Like I
And in nursing, there are several degrees. Like I know you're a nurse, but I believe you've got some other qualifications in there.
well, when I first started nursing, it was a 3-year diploma way back in the day.
Yeah.
So I went to community college and did a 3-year, very practical diploma program, and then went back to school after I had all the kids. I went back to school and did some distance ed to get my undergrad degree, because they had then switched all the education over to degree program. You could be grandfathered in as an RN, but if you wanted to be promoted, they wanted you to have a degree in nursing. And so, at that time I was doing shift work and, working around my husband's hours and 4 little kids and all that stuff. And I thought, this isn't sustainable. I need a day job. And if I want a day job, I know I need an undergrad. So I went back to school and got an undergrad. And then when I became a nurse manager in Calgary, they wanted me to have a graduate degree. So I did a graduate degree, and I chose to do it in leadership, not nursing. I'd had enough of nursing theory by that time. I'd taught nursing theory, I'd studied nursing theory, and I honestly, like the caring milieu, gag, like whatever. So I studied leadership, and it has opened a lot of doors for me. Like a degree opens a lot of doors, like especially the leadership stuff has like if you say if you have a graduate degree in leadership, everyone gets people are happy with that. But I also say, like, if having said, I was a nurse for 25 years, people are happy with that too. They don't, they don't ask for, did you do a degree in nursing, or did you do a diploma in nursing? And, they want to know where I worked and what I've learned. But much like you, I've taken all of that and I apply it to helping people navigate a system that is difficult.
Yeah. And all of those different bits from all the different sources, they
learned a ton,
right? Yeah.
And nursing was great because I could do all kinds of different things in nursing. And so I jumped around a fair bit. About every 5 to 7 years, I would switch my career path. And so I got a pretty well-rounded view of the healthcare system. And like you, I have a soft spot for people who are struggling and who are, suffering, especially, if I've got some expertise in that area and I can help them, especially to navigate a complex system, I do.
Yeah. Well, I would bet as well with everything that's happening in the world that your history, your experience, and with what you do with your business is going to kind of break open itself based on the numbers of people that are just, I think, at wit's end. Wit's end is a nice way to say.
Well, yeah, I think so. And what I think about people right now is people who are forced into isolation with someone with an addiction, for example. So if you are now stuck in your home with someone who's using and wreaking havoc and creating chaos, how do you stay sane in that environment? And so that's sort of what my mind is on these days with pandemic and with thinking about people being stuck in their homes for months to come.
Yeah. Well, I would think there's going to be, there's going to be a pile up of people looking for your help. And I know that you're so good at getting to the root of it. That's it's always been a remarkable thing. From the very first day we met, I think we got 5 layers deep into every topic that we spoke about and so on. So.
Yeah. So what's your prediction? Thank you very much for that. I don't want to skip. Thank you for that. What's your prediction for pandemic? What do you think is going to happen here?
I think, I hate to say, 100 years from now, I mean, I probably shouldn't use that phrase.
100 years from now, we'll be in another pandemic.
Sometimes my kids are wound up or people are wound up and I say, it won't matter 100 years from now, will it? And so it's amazing that, with the H1N1 and with SARS and all that kind of a thing. I remember the term. I don't remember any havoc per se, and so on. And so this will certainly be the biggest one, just because of the big economy shutdown and so on. So I think it's like everything else. Iron sharpens iron. It hones when shite happens. It kind of hones you, prepares you, and makes you better or stronger, or it doesn't. And so the ones that it makes stronger, I think, will flourish, and the ones that it doesn't, I think it's unfortunate. But I guess no matter what horrible things happen on the planet, something good spins out of it. So I tend to be an optimist and try and think past this current situation. So I'm doing the right thing. I'm not doing anything risky. I am staying out of the masses for sure. I will protect myself the way that they've told us to, and again, sit at the feet of the people that know, and watch, listen, learn, and model, right? Do what it I didn't believe for 1 second the whole crap about masks aren't helping. What? I mean, a 6-year-old could figure out. Forgive me. Hope you're not on the other. Are you on the other?
This is where we get into it. Duke's up, Randall. I'm just kidding. I'm just
kidding. No, but ultimately, if whether people are breathing out or breathing in, some kind of a layer is a good thing. But anyway, I'm not doing any risky stuff. I don't park where it says don't park. I don't go, 90 when it says 50 and that kind of a thing. So I'm kind of trying to toe the line to, and you want to be an example for your kids. Are your kids a little more free thinking about that, and feeling a little more? I felt invincible when I was a kid. I thought nothing can hurt me. And now, of course, the older you get, the more the more vulnerable, right, we become. But are your kids doing that? Are they just being toeing the line completely and
well, they're all considered essential services. So my kids are all going to work, doing their thing. So there's some risk involved in that. My big concern at this point would be my granddaughter, because she has some acute medical needs. And even though, kids don't seem to be being put on ventilators and acquiring the respiratory issues that adults are, she can become very, very sick with even the slightest fever, cold, exposure. And so she's my worry. And so that's where I'm probably maybe a little bit stringent, maybe a little encouraging people to be a little bit more careful, and even early on, because my son was listening to the news and saying, well, kids aren't at risk, and I'm saying, but your daughter is. Your daughter is, because of these other issues. And so I think everybody's been pretty good, honestly. Like I say, we're having the family Zooms, and we're very conscious of who are we going around. Like I say, Sam's the only person that I'm face to face with at any time, and I know where he's going and who he's seeing, and he's keeping it to a small circle too. So I think they're all being pretty good, actually.
Yeah, that's good.
I think I'm a slow learner is the way that I describe it, and so they're at least as fast as I am, if not faster. So that's what I see.
Well, I don't think you're that slow of a learner. Maybe sometimes when you were talking about, relationships or what friends and that kind of thing, some people, we all have some, I think that I love them more over there than I love them here.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking of people that I will put up with behavior, even though I'm kind of like, this doesn't feel right. Yeah. And then I'll put up with it, and I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And so then when that person, shows up again, I'm like, done. Yeah. Whereas you, if they'll come to you, you'll be like, well, yes, but you're better at having, you're better at keeping the lines of communication open and still having a boundary. Whereas my boundary is like, no, you're out. Should have done it a month ago.
Yeah. And so believe me, there's some mutual admiration here, because I've told you to your face, and I would tell the world, my life is better because you're in it, in our friendship and so on. And so I honor the example that you are, and there's for sure there's benefit in the different styles of communicating and that kind of a thing. And so again, anyway, with all due respect to all of those people that are different, varying levels of friendship and that kind of thing, sometimes we can have some clutter, just like in accumulating too much stuff for your house and that kind of a thing. So one thing, I mean, that I've told my kids, they understand clearly, and I hear it in their adult conversation, is that, we don't have fair weather friends, right?
Right.
And so we either are or aren't. They're in that zone or they're not. And, I mean, I have a half a dozen people, I'm sure most people do, where, if I was carted off to a jail in a foreign land, 4 or 5 of them would do what it takes to kind of come and get me, find me,
Yeah.
get me out, break me out, sift me
Yeah.
out, or what have you. And you could just count on them for anything and everything. And fortunately, we don't have to call on that. But it's anyway. I just remember saying to my kids lots of times, we don't do risky things. And then I would talk about the example, that just went through. And we don't have fair weather friends,
Mm-hmm.
frenemies, right? That's really tough with girls, I found, more so than with boys, right? Boys call each other names, and that's a term of that's love
Yeah.
between boys. And girls can be charming to each other, and then when they go their separate ways, they're catty, and it's funny that observing both styles, right, of communication. Forgive me for doing this. I have a great cartoon that I spotted a few years ago, and I've told my kids about it, and it was a good example for my daughter. And the cartoon on top, it was 2 frames, top frame, bottom frame. Top frame was 3 guys, hats on sideways, stick men, 3 stick boys, right? Just a quick drawing. And these guys were just hanging out together. One of the guys said, "Hey guys, I gotta go." And the other 2 guys said, "See you later." And they called him a horrible name. And, "Yeah, you dirtbag, say hi to your hot mom." Blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And so,
Yeah.
and they're insulting him as he's going away. And then as soon as he's at a distance, 10 feet away, 12 feet away, one guy turns to the other, says, "I love that guy. He's the best." But they just pooped on him right to his face, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the bottom frame is 3 girls, 3 stick girls, curly hair, ribbon in the hair, and that kind of a thing. And they're all together. And they're all, "Oh, sweetie, your hair looks spectacular. You look so lovely. Da, 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 da. You're so beautiful," and da, 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 da. And they're just giving each other compliments and that kind of thing. And one of the girls, like the guys, says, "Hey, I got to go. I'll see you later." And as soon as she walks away, she's 10 feet away. And the one girl says to the other girl, "That slut, she's after my boyfriend." And the other one says, "That bitch, she thinks she's hotter than me." It's a horrible cartoon, but it's like I see this happen, between boys and girls. Boys insult each other. That's love. Girls are, anyway.
So I agree with you.
There was.
Historically, I think that there is that gender difference,
Mhm.
but I don't know that that's going to be true. That's true
No,
in
not
the
true
newest
forever.
generation
No.
or in the next generation.
Yeah, but you come up through that filter, right?
Yeah.
And then you gotta. I mean, my daughter's, 25 now, and so she's well beyond that stuff. But when that's happening, when they're 10, 11, 12, and you let your bottom lip down, and you get kind of, it's like the weak fish in the aquarium. He gets pulverized by the other fish, and I'm like, "Oh, Dolly, you gotta smile when you're getting a rough time." For the other girls, don't let them get your goat, or they'll come in anyway.
Girls are vicious in adolescence.
In adolescence. So anyway, as they come up through different filters, right? You learn how to handle those things. So anyway, sorry, I didn't.
No, it's okay. We could get right into that conversation.
We could.
But I think so. What's one thing that you've learned in the last 4 weeks that you want to carry forward with you after our freedom is given back?
What's one thing that I've learned in the last 4 weeks that will be, I think, a lot of, there's been a cultural change. It will be there for years and years. I suspect we'll eventually mosey back to the point where 60,000 people will show up at the Coliseum for an Elvis or a no. Oh, geez,
Elvis.
I dated
Whoa.
myself.
Whoa,
an Elton concert or what have you. Elvis is still alive, by the way. I remember where I was the day he passed. I remember the moment I heard it. And I turned around and went to go and tell a group of people anyway. But yeah, I think that we'll go back to, we're going to go back to much of the same, just like, there's been a plague, and there's been a black plague and a bubonic plague, and, all of these things. So I think that, we're going to go back. It's going to take some time to recover the kind of thing. What have I learned in the last 4 weeks?
That you will carry forward, like one thing that you'll do maybe differently,
that I'll do differently,
or think about differently. I don't
know. I would say that I try and I probably pushed my kids on the idea of the face masks and the distancing and that kind of thing to the level that of annoyance and so on. So I'm glad that I did it. I'll not try not to bring it up again in the future, and so on. And of course, I hope that none of them fall into that path of the virus and that kind of thing. But what I've learned is that just follow the recommendations, and again, don't be a disciple of any one person in the news that's spitting it out about how things should be and when it will flatten out and what you should do and what you shouldn't do and what drugs you should take or drugs you shouldn't take or what have you. And again, it comes down to a favorite Jim Rohnism of mine, and that is, read 3 books on the topic and make up your own mind. Don't be a disciple of any one Fauci or what's his name, doctor. Don't be, on one hand, you're seeing him saying, hey, face masks are just for people that, have it, not to spread it. And then in the same moment, 5 minutes later, I'm watching a video of the head guy in South Korea, 30 years. He's been the head of infectious diseases. He's a doctor. He's being interviewed. And I watch him in this 3-minute section of a 35-minute interview. I'm watching the oh my gosh, what's it called? Wait, the words in English on the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the guy's part of the conversation was, what about face masks? And in 11 different ways, he says, of course, it's better if people have face masks. Of course, the U.S. telling you not to buy face masks in a very kind and medical kind of way, a professional way. He said, of course it helps. 11 different ways, he said, of course it helps. And it's just that because, they're short of supplies, they're telling you don't need them. I'm one for the truth. Don't sugarcoat that to me, And so anyway, so that's what I think I would learn is just don't be a disciple of any one news channel, any one medical leader who says this is how it is. Just be a student, keep watching, listening and learning, and it'll evolve and you'll make the right decisions. Yeah.
That's good.
So,
is there anything that you want to promote before we wrap this up?
I want to promote? No, just stay and just follow the distancing thing is, would be my word for anybody. And there's no such thing as just once. I'm going to do it just once. I'm going to get together with a group of people just once because we just don't know, right? Where it's what's what. But anyway, nothing to promote other than, if you're green, you're growing. If you're ripe, you're raw. Keep learning.
I like it.
To learn. Yeah.
You are a lifelong learner, and I think I'll describe you that way in my my show notes. And if it's okay with you, I might still put your contact information in case someone is looking at, because people will need new cars, new vehicles in this time. And you are a phenomenal resource for people in that regard, as well as in all the other ways that we talked about here. Like, I mean, and I'll put some links into the Jim Rohn stuff and this focus on the family and all that stuff too, so that people are interested in that, they'll find it.
Family Life Today, Dennis Rainey, and I can't remember the other guy's name, but I will. But that was what it was. And worth researching if you're finding yourself empty or hungry or feeling inadequate in a certain area in your life, because anything you ever wanted to accomplish in your life, someone has done it, and they've done it well. And once they become that accomplished, they spill their guts and they will give you every single note that it takes. They will give you every single thought that's necessary for you to, gather that skill, right? Relationship skill, whatever. So anyway, Maureen,
awesome.
Always
Randall,
lovely to see you.
Always lovely to see you.
Is my head twice as big as yours, or am I just sitting too close? Oh, I knew I should have been sitting back here. I said to my son Jay, I said, "There's this one girl I know, and in her Instagram, she's always this big." And, and I said, I keep wanting to block her, but I can't.
That's hilarious.
I
That's
can't
hilarious.
block her. Yes, I'm just wondering how close she can get before she crawls through my phone. Anyway,
That's funny.
love you, buddy. Nice to see you.
Love you too, Randal.
Always.
We'll talk
All right.
soon.
Cheers. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Oh,
You're doing a great
you.
thing. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Friends, thank you very much for listening. I am again your host, Maureen Towns, and I'm the founder of Maureen Towns Consulting. And what I do is I support families who are really struggling to support people in their family or people that they love who have mental health and addictions issues. And I help take those families from chaos to calm. My work is based on my 25 plus years working in healthcare as a nurse, both in the public and the private system in both Ontario and Alberta, and also my education and facilitation in leadership, and also my success and my failures as a mom supporting children with mental health and addictions issues. And you can read all about those issues and how I came to know what I know and all the things that I wish I had known years ago when I began the journey with my kids in the book that I'm going to publish this year called Broken Open. Same name as the podcast. You can find me at MaureenTowns.com. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to chat with anybody. And if you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and share widely. Take care of yourself, my friends. Bye.